Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Health Such channel. I want to take my time to thank you guys for watching this video today. And I want to thank any recent subscribers or viewers for supporting this channel and watching our last video, which was, again, over anatomy. Think of this anatomy as a game, and everything I'm going to describe to you are the players that are involved in this game. So let's start with this. What are the players? We know that the players involved are going to be two long bones for the leg, distal leg extremity, and that's going to be the tibia and the fibula. So remember it this way. The tibia is big and the fibula is small. All right, so the tibia is on the medial side and it's the big bone, and the fibula is on the lateral side and it's the smaller bone. All right, and then the next bone we're gonna have, yes, the femur will come into play, but not until we talk about a couple different muscles, and I'll show you when. But for now, the main ones are gonna be the 7 tarsal bones. You know, you have the calcaneus, satalis, and then yes, you see the navicular, you see the 3 cuneiforms, so the intermediate, or the medial, intermediate, and lateral, and then you see right there on the outside that cuboid, so that makes sense there. And then you have the 5 metatarsals, and also you're gonna have 14 phalanges. It would be 15 if that big toe had a middle phalange, but it does not. It only has the distal and the proximal. All right, and then next we have how many muscles in each compartment. So we're gonna break this up. I like to compartmentalize things, you know this. So we have 6 anterior muscles, 6 anterior muscles. I'm just gonna throw out some pictures, guys. This is tough to show you on myself. And then we have 25 posterior muscles, and then we're gonna have 2 lateral muscles. And you can see I changed them for the colors that they are gonna be described here. And for the first one, we have anterior foot, or otherwise, this is gonna be known as the dorsum of the foot when we have green. So anterior is gonna be green, posterior purple, and then we have lateral in the corner over here for light green. Lateral for light green. All right, guys, so again, I want you to make a couple more distinguished features that you need to know about. So, for example, we have anterior versus posterior, dorsal versus plantar. This is for the foot. Dorsum of the foot is top, or the anterior side, in anatomical position. And then the bottom side, where you plant, so if you like basketball, where you plant your feet to shoot, that's your plantar side of your foot. Okay, guys, so for the actions, of course, we're gonna have flexion, extension of the trunk, which we'll talk about in the second part of this video. You have flexion, extension of the knee. So flexion, extension of the knee, and we'll talk about that in the other video. Today, we're gonna be focusing on dorsiflexion. So that's closing that angle from the tibia to the foot. And then we're gonna talk about plantar flexion. So that's just lifting yourself off the ground. And then we're gonna also talk about extension of the toes, the digits, or flexion of the toes, or the digits. So just because I forgot to mention this, I wanted to highlight inversion versus eversion as well. Inversion is in this way. This is the most common way we roll our ankle. And then we have eversion. And the reason I'm mentioning this now is because I also forget in the future of this video to talk about the lateral compartment with the fibularis longus and brevis, because you have to know the difference between the insertion points. The brevis is shorter, so it's gonna go from the lateral compartment down to the base of the 5th metatarsal. And you can't even see mine because, well, I told you about my shoes I wear. Yeah, those are ugly toes. My pinky, that's my abductor digiti minimi work in there. And then again, the lateral of the brevis goes down to the base of the 5th, and then the longus, the fibularis longus, actually goes around to my big toe at the base of that, so that I can evert my ankle. Goes around so I can evert it. So that's that. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So what are the first 2 muscles, or the first 4, 5, 6 muscles? The first 6 muscles are, of course, anterior muscles of your leg or your foot. So let's talk about the dorsal side of your foot. You only have 2 that you really need to know about. And this is gonna be the extensor digitorum brevis and the extensor hallucis brevis. So these are 2 little muscles on the dorsum of your foot. So 2 muscles and 1 nerve innervation. And that nerve innervation is gonna be the deep fibular nerve. And a way I like to remember this is DE, the first DE is for digit extensors. So I usually would put digit extensors down, because look at, if you notice, all the anterior compartment is the same nerve. So let's go down to the anterior leg, or up to the anterior leg, and you see 4 muscles with 1 nerve. What are the muscles? Extensor digitorum longus. Oh, brevis was there on the foot. Longus is on the leg. Okay, so it must be longer. Then we have extensor hallucis longus. What's hallucis? Hallucis is the Latin word for big toe, or so your hallucis versus your pollicis. Remember, pollicis was thumb. And then you have what? Tibialis anterior. So remember, tibialis for the in front of your tibia. And then you have fibularis tertius. So that's going to be probably more on the lateral side, but it's still anterior, right in front. You can see it right there. And then this is all going to be the deep fibular nerve. If you noticed, I put 6 little lines under there. I try to like put in these little things that help me to remember big picture stuff. So I underlined it 6 times to show you that 6 muscles are innervated by this one nerve, the digit extensors. Look at all your extensors. Extensor, extensor, extensor. Now the only difference here, because they extend your digits, your digits of your toes, so the phalanges of your feet, rather than your hands. And then tibialis anterior, of course, is going to help when you're walking to concentrically contract and dorsiflex your foot to prepare for that heel strike in a walk. So you'll have to know about gait and stuff like that too when we talk about lower extremities. Another video. All right, guys. Also, you noticed I put the boxes that are wrapped in orange are just the nerves. So as we go through, I'll help break that down for you. So we got the anterior side done. Boom. Health sucks, but knowledge is power. So let's continue. Next one, posterior side. This one's a little bit more difficult. So we know that the dorsum of the foot only had 2 muscles, but the plantar side is going to have 18 muscles with 4 layers. So this is how we're going to break it apart in the layers. So for the first layer, we have how many muscles? 3 muscles in the first layer with 2 nerve innervations. So we have the abductor hallucis, so that's going to abduct the big toe. And then you have the flexor digitorum brevis, so it's going to flex the little digits. And then you have the abductor digiti minimi. Mine, because I've been wearing these tight little non-ergonomical shoes my whole life, are my flexor or my abductor digiti minimi. It doesn't work much like an abductor anymore. It's kind of like a flexor because my toe's been cramped like that my whole life. But anyway, the abductor digiti minimi is for the little pinky toe. And then we have the second layer. All right, before I move on, just to talk about the innervations, there's only going to be 2. So if it's red, it's going to be the medial plantar nerve. And if it's blue, it's going to be the lateral plantar nerve. So red for medial, obviously is going to be most likely the muscles on the medial side. For example, remember hallucis for big toe is on the medial side. And then if it's blue, it's going to most likely be on the lateral side. Again, digiti minimi is on that lateral side in anatomical position. Does that make sense? Okay, good, good. Next one is going to be the second layer. So for the second layer, we have 2. So it goes 3, 2, 3, 2 for each layer. So for the second one, we have the quadratus plantae, as you can see right there. And then you have the lumbricals. You can see I put the first L as red, and the bulletin point is black. Black is both. So the first lumbrical is actually going to be a medial plantar innervation versus the next 2 through 4 lumbricals, which are going to be lateral plantar innervation. And that is important to understand because those are one muscle group with 2 innervations. All right, guys, and the lumbricals are the same. They're abducting. And then we have what? The third layer. If it's 3, 2, 3. So third is going to have 3 of them. Flexor hallucis brevis. Hallucis is on that medial side, so it's going to be medial plantar. And it's the little flexor. And then you have adductor hallucis, so it's going to add that big toe to the midline of your foot. So it's going to bring it in. And then you have the flexor digiti minimi brevis. Flexor digiti minimi brevis is going to be lateral again, and it's also going to flex the little toe. It's just the mini version. And then you have the 4th layer, which is going to be the innervations. Remember, once again, we have the pad and the dab. So when are you going to come over my house to have a dab? Or to dab? It's going to be come to my pad at 3. So pad in the front for 3. At 4 in the back for a dab. Okay? So does that make sense to you guys? Because there's 3 muscles of the pads and there's 3 or 4 muscles in the dabs or the dorsal innervations. All right? And that covers it. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different muscles right there. And then obviously we have, hold on, 1, 2, oh, sorry, I wasn't counting. I was like, wait a minute, that's not 18 muscles. But it's because we got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So that's really 18 muscles there. All right, guys, that covers it. That's bada bing, bada boom. You know the bottom of the foot now. It's really not that hard. I want to say it's easy, but it's probably not that easy. But the more you go over it and you compartmentalize it like this, the easier it becomes. Because now you know, all right, if someone asks me about the foot muscles, I know you can either ask me about the nerves, you can ask me about the muscle, you can ask me about the origin insertion, but you're gonna better break it apart because you know, well, if it's on the medial side of the foot or it's on the lateral side, you know the innervations already, just based off of its location. All right, guys, so let's move on. I wanted to put lateral compartment over here by itself in light green to help demonstrate that it's still kind of a part of the anterior leg, but it's in the lateral compartment and it has a different nervous innervation. So that's why I put it by itself. And that's 2 muscles, so 2 more muscles. Because remember we had fibularis tertius. Why would it be tertius if there's not, another 2? Well, there is. Over here, you have the fibularis longus and then you have the fibularis brevis. Guess what both of those are innervated by? The superficial fibular nerve. Now for you, those of you guys that might be confused about these nerves, well, we did cover a video on the lumbosacral plexus where we talked about these nerves. When the sciatic comes off the L4, L5 trunk, remember that? It comes together and then it bifurcates again into 2 separate nerves down at the popliteal fossa. Yes, that's the tibial nerve and the common peroneal or the common fibular nerve. Now we're going away from peroneal and using other names to describe nerves and stuff like that. And we're sticking with, I'm gonna stick with anyway, the ones that are easier or better to understand as it's related to its anatomy. So we're gonna have the common fibular nerve and the tibial nerve. Now we know that the tibial nerve is most likely gonna innervate the posterior leg. So that's just gonna go straight down after the popliteal fossa and innervate those. But the fibular nerves, there's gonna be a superficial on the lateral side, so the L in superficial for lateral. And then you remember you had the deep fibular. That is actually a branch off the common fibular nerve. So the common fibular nerve branches twice, to superficial, and then it goes deep inside the muscles to the anterior side. I know this is weird to say it's coming from the back to the front and it's going deep. That doesn't make sense because usually we'd say, well, the heart is deep to the rib cage. We know that, but we're working from our way from the back to the front. So yeah, it's a little bit more confusing, but it makes sense when you understand that sciatic nerve and where it's bifurcating. So again, the deep fibular nerve then goes to the anterior leg, the superficial goes to the lateral compartment, so that leaves that tibial nerve to go to the posterior leg. So the posterior leg has how many muscles? 7. 7 muscles with 1 nerve innervation. So this, again, helps us compartmentalize them. So let's start with the tibialis posterior. And then, this is our Tom, Dick, and Harry of our leg, of our posterior leg. So you have to know about Tom, Dick, and Harry because those guys go through that tarsal tunnel. And then what you have to know is the tibialis posterior, the flexor digitorum longus, and the flexor hallucis longus kind of all come together and their tendons go right under that tarsal tunnel. And these are very important, obviously, for plantar flexion. Next, we have the gastrocnemius. That's that calf. That's that one most superficial muscle you see. And then you have just under that is actually the plantaris. Now, the plantaris kind of follows that gastroc in a sense that it crosses 2 joints. It crosses that knee joint at the top, and it also crosses the ankle joint down at the bottom. So these 2 are going to be very important. You might get asked a question about these because of the importance they have crossing those 2 barriers. So it's going to be a weak knee flexor, but it's also going to be a weak plantar flexor as well, whereas the gastroc's a strong knee flexor or a very strong plantar flexor. And then we have the common insertion point in the calcaneus or the calcaneal tendon, not necessarily Achilles tendon anymore. All right, guys, so next we have the soleus, which lies just under that, the plantaris, and that's going to have the same action, except for it doesn't cross the knee joint. It's connecting to the tibia, I believe. And then you see I kind of cross this at a 45-degree diagonal because why? Because I wanted the popliteus to pop out at you. because the popliteus is that little muscle that actually can help you unlock your knee. To unlock your knee. Yes. That makes sense to me, and I hope it makes sense to you. Again, if the pictures didn't help, then it's obvious that you're just not quite making the connections yet, and you haven't researched or viewed the muscles enough to be comfortable regurgitating this stuff. Because if you do get confused, that's fine. That's part of the process. But the more you repeat just going over this and grouping them, the easier it's going to become to you, because you know where their location is. Therefore, the action of them is going to be that much easier to understand. All right, guys, so that covers it for the posterior leg. And in fact, that covers this whole section. And now you guys know the players that are involved in both the leg and the foot anatomy. Our next section, or our next video, is going to cover the thighs on the front and the back, along with the hip muscles. So guys, I hope you were able to learn something today, and thank you for sticking with me. Again, health sucks, but knowledge is power. Let's talk about it, guys.